Hello, test, test. Thank you. Thank you for having me here, Ricardos and GameOn. I'm here to talk about creating the VR games of the future. But before I talk a little bit about myself and what I do, I'm going to let these YouTubers try to pronounce our game studio.
Hello everybody, Toasted Loaf! This is SVRVIVE. SVRVIVE.
SVRVIVE. Survive. Survive.
I just realised then, even though it's survive, it's got vibe in it as well, and it's for the vibe. Inception.
SVRVIVE. SVRVIVE.
Survive.
Yes, so my name is Faviana Vangelius, and I am the CEO and co-founder of the very hard to pronounce VR game studio SVRVIVE, or SVRVIVE, whichever. I have co-founded the studio together with these four guys, Johan, Hampus, Pontus, and my dear fiancé Nils, who's sitting right there. And basically, we started 5 months ago. We got a pretty good funding of 1.5 million. Forgot that detail. And now we're 12 people. We're based in Stockholm, Sweden. And we are about to launch our full title release, also called Survive, the Deus Helix, which is going to be an episodic tale. So, VR today. I don't know how much you know about VR, but I figured I would talk about a little bit of a snapshot, how it looks today, pretty much. So today there is a raging hardware war. We have Facebook, who bought Oculus, HTC Vive. We have Sony PlayStation VR, which actually really launched some weeks ago. We have Google and Cardboard. We have Samsung Gear. Actually, Microsoft announced, I think it was only 2 days ago, they're also gonna create a VR headset. So these are one of the biggest tech in the world creating VR hardware. Another thing is that there is also a media hype. Journalists and bloggers and YouTubers talking about this. You see it daily on the news. This is just some of the headshots from some days ago. Another interesting thing is that there is a big investor hype. As I mentioned, we got 1.5 million euros, and there is money pouring a lot into VR at the moment. A third thing also, it's the consumer curiosity. Pretty much, we have Stockholm VR Meetup, we have Women in VR, which is where I'm also a moderator. We have all these events where people are really just curious but wanting to try VR. Even my cousins or my mom are very curious and interested, and this is the first time. You can also see it by a very simple search, where you can see on Google Trends, where, yes, VR game and VR video and VR porn are being high-scotted. We really love games. We don't really do much video and porn, well, so there's some uncertainty and change. Even though there's all these things happening with the money and media and investors and consumer curiosity, we still don't really know where this is going. We just know that it's going somewhere. And we've actually seen this pattern, familiar pattern somewhere before. You can see when social media first was created, even with the smartphones and tablets, which was exactly the same thing. It was consumer curiosity, there was investors pouring money, there was a raging war, all of that. So pretty much you could say that we've seen this before. Now, how to enter the VR market? So we at Survive Studios, we did some analysis, knowing that, well, this is going somewhere, so this is really cool to be involved in. So one of the good things we figured out was that we need to have some speed. And by speed we mean that if you're fast and amongst the first ones, you're gonna have some kind of market share. There are not many players out there that you need to compete with. Another thing is that you more easily get partnerships. For instance, we're talking with both HTC Vive and Oculus Touch. Sony PlayStation VR, it's what we're creating for. We're talking with MSI, VR-ready laptops, and Lenovo. And I could mention even more, but you get the point. It's easier to get in contact and get some partnerships if you are really fast out there. And insights. We learn a lot if we do things now and quickly. And a second thing that we thought of in Survive Studios is to be innovative. Because really, in VR, there aren't any rules yet or any guides. There aren't any VR schools. So pretty much you are the ones that get to find this out by yourselves. And usually, with new tech comes new opportunities. So we have to be innovative in that area. And this is one of my favorites, F-up, which basically means that if you try many things, you will learn a lot. So fail fast, and also my point before that is that if you fail fast, then you will succeed faster. And this is our team at Survive Studios. As I mentioned, we are 12 people at the moment. And one good thing with having a diversified team is that you get even more insights from different angles and perspectives, and it makes the job even cooler. So we want to welcome the differences from all perspectives and really give the power to the crowd. So it's not only one boss, me, saying what everyone else should say or do. So we, as a collaboration together as a team, make the decisions. And that has really helped us drive the company forward. And one of the last things is to make friends. This is actually at Stockholm VR Meetup, where we were demoing. And in this market, where it's so little still, there's no point in making enemies or competitors, as I would say. So the really good thing to do is to build a community together. We aren't many VR people, so why not be friends and help each other out? And once again, see the other competitors as colleagues, not competitors, because that's how you're going to help each other out. So what VR brings to the world and why we at Survive Studios decided that this is the coolest thing ever. So pretty much throughout all time, really, we as human beings we like to have imagination and do storytelling. And with VR, it's really a great medium to emphasize this, to express both imagination and storytelling. Another really cool thing with VR is you get to explore and visit entirely new worlds. This is from Blue, which is on HTC Vive. And we like to play with emotions. And a really good thing with VR is that it's very immersive. Anyone that has tried VR knows that it feels like almost you were there. And this is going to be a little bit of sound, so bear with me. Yeah, I'm gonna stop it there. So emotions, it really feels like you were there once again, and even little things like if it's a dark room, even if it's not a horror game, people get really scared because it's so immersive. So that's another really good thing with VR. Another thing also that we have found out is that pretty much everyone that tries VR for the first time acts like drunk 2-year-olds. So we have different objects in our VR game, right? And people will grab things. They will have, I don't know, a coffee mug or even a flashlight, and we will look at it, fascinated forever, as if it's the first time they will see these objects in real life. Another thing that they more often than seldom do is that they throw and break everything that they get their hands on, even if it's just a book or if it's a light bulb. They will try to crash it, and really like 2-year-olds. And once again, they get very, very, very easily scared. So even though our first game, which is not a horror game, it's actually an adventure mystery game, people will get scared. So we have had to really elaborate, redoing and rethinking and making everything less, so it won't feel so scary. So what to create for VR if you are into thinking of it or in the hopes? Well, once again, since VR, it's so good with imagination and storytelling. This is pics actually from actual game that we're building, where we have a storyline, and we have really been fortunate enough to have a whole full story inside of the game, and it's been working really great so far. And the second, if you remember, exploration and new worlds. This is also from our game. What we thought with the analysts was that, okay, what makes VR good? Well, it's to explore new worlds. So let's make the player force them to explore new worlds. So you play as an agent, and you have to go to all these different worlds, different times, different dimensions, to actually make them explore by their own as well. And immersion and emotions, once again. And if you haven't tried our demo, which is out there on HTC Vive, you might not want to look, or you want to look anyways. So this is a little bit from our gameplay.
God damn, this is fucking... I didn't think this game was gonna be like creepy. Okay. Are you taking notes, practices? Okay. Why is there a black light in here? Okay. Oh. Can I replace the light bulb? Okay.
So, really great guy. So what we had to do here was, once again, the fuck-ups then. What we found out was that a lot of things that we had been working on didn't really work quite the way we had thought or wanted. So when I say that, well, people get scared, people will get scared. So pretty much to sum it up, what I've been talking about in creating the future of VR games The first one being that VR, as it says, is an avalanche about to roll. Meaning, we don't really know when it's going to happen. We've seen that most of the people buying VR hardware are the early adopters. And before we can reach the mass market, which means all other players out there, is two things. The one being we have to have cheaper hardware. It is very expensive buying HTC Vive and the Oculus Touch at the moment, even though I think it's worth it, but not everyone thinks the same as me. You also need a super, super monster gaming computer, which is not also very cheap. The good thing is that PlayStation VR just launched with half of the price, so that's a good thing, and you don't need a monster gaming computer. All you need is a PlayStation 4. So that's helping. But we still need the hardware to be cheaper. And if there's something we know throughout history, is that hardware has always become cheaper at some point. And another thing that needs to happen is that the mobile VR, which is more accessible around the world, because basically all you need is your own mobile phone, bless you, is that needs to be more immersive. If you compare low-end VR, is what we call the mobile versions, to premium high-end VR, it's still really cool, and it's cool, mobile VR as well, but not as immersive. So that needs to be a little tiny bit better. And how we think that you can ride this avalanche, so to speak, is like, as we were saying, to be fast, you need the speed. If you are entering the market quickly, you have bigger chance of succeeding. This is why when we were raising money, we were one of the few ones. So it was easier to collect money, it was easier to collect partnerships, and, well, market share, once again. Don't be afraid to fail. You will learn so much. And one of the things for me in the beginning was I was afraid of failures, but try to see failures as learnings. And with each time you fail, you learn something new. And at this point, since, once again, there aren't any blueprints of how to make VR, you just have to experiment, iterate. What you kill your darlings. If it's something you really love and then it doesn't really work, just move on quickly. Diversify your team, because once again, having new perspectives from different kinds of minds and people will ultimately make a better and greater product or service. And lastly, build the community. I don't know if you have a VR meetup here. If it doesn't, well, create one. You will find that more people are interested. And on these meetups, you can talk about the latest in VR, you can exchange learnings, you can laugh about each other's fuck-ups, whichever. But the community is really, really great when there aren't many other VR players out there. And that gets you a time and chance to meet each other and help each other. And then what to bring for the ride to the avalanche. What we found out is that storytelling is really great. Right now, on VR, there aren't much storytelling. There are mainly demos and tech experiences. Most of them just shooting, and yeah, people will become bored maybe quickly. So if you make a story longer, people might actually follow you longer. And VR is really great way to do that. Worlds to explore. That's the fantastic thing about VR. You get to be in a completely different world. But for me, that loves games, it's something extraordinary to be inside the game and explore and be inside of the game. It's just really crazy. 2016. And lastly, emotions to feel. You can really play with the players here. If you want to make a really horror game, please be gentle, because people will get really, really scared. And then lastly, and not least, don't forget to entertain the drunk 2-year-olds. Thank you. Have time for some questions?
Yeah, we have quite a lot of time actually.
Yep.
So please, I can bring you a microphone.
Hi, Madis from Estonia, the Estonian VR guy. So I absolutely agree with all the conclusions you made, and I see one of the major problems with the avalanche could be that there aren't enough developers. So you had a big team. How easy was it to gather all these people, or how should we get more people developing VR, and whose problem is it anyway?
Yes. So, as I was saying in the beginning, there is a VR war, meaning that all of the major tech companies are fighting to get the customers to buy their VR headsets. Now, there isn't any much problem with the hardware today. There was, like, I mean, seriously, there was in the 90s with the Reachable. We don't talk about that. But VR is really from the 60s even. And one of the greatest things today is that we have the hardware finally. What we are lacking of, and what the hardwares are actually fighting for, is the content. We need more content, games, experiences. And if you think about VR, there's so much more than just games. I mean, it can do the education, where instead of reading about the old Greeks or about the pyramids, you can actually be there and look at it yourself. And health, we have a lot of psychology problems being researched now, how you can, like arachnophobia, like you have little spiders, etc. So the content needs to be created. And how we were able to find our team members was, well, for one, I'm very persuasive. So I was telling my team that this is it, this is the future, just bear with me. So if you don't believe in it, and if you don't have a great vision, why should they? So the first thing is to believe in yourself and the product and, well, where VR is headed. The second is, well, once again, we got a pretty massive investment. So that also helps. So we were 5 people in the beginning, and then now we are 12. And we said that even if we don't get investment, we're still going to do this. But it's going to take a longer time. But then we got the investment, and then we could hire people. And I think the third thing is... No. So, once again, nobody is a VR expert. VR hasn't existed as it is now for long, so you can't put on the CV VR expert, or you need to know VR. You just have to learn by doing. It's a lot of trial and error, really. So what we were looking for was 3D artists, just like any other 3D artist, programmers, etc. The only thing was that they really, really wanted to work with VR, and that was the third thing I was going to say. One of the reasons why it isn't that hard is because, well, VR is pretty cool. Really, like it's a fun product and medium to work with. So just the fact that a lot of the games that you have on consoles or PC or even mobile, there's something about working with the future of games, of VR games. So some of our people were interested. They wanted to do something different than what they had done before. Now with VR, it's very different than on any other game medium. So, yeah, that was the third thing anyways. And, well, with the meetups, you're gonna find people that are interested in VR, and then through their own network. So for me, it was easy because I've been working at the gaming industry before. But just tell everyone and anyone that I'm looking for people to work with VR with me. So that will be my tips. Any other questions? Hi. So the question was what game engine we are using. So we are using Unity. You can use Unreal. There is happening a lot with VR at the moment. There are a lot of VR plugins. And if you're early, once again, speed, early markets, partnerships, we're actually talking with both Unity and Unreal. And they're really helpful. They love, it's like you were saying, they need content, they need people to create the VR experiences and games. So we started with Unity, but if you're more comfortable with Unreal, you could also work with that engine.
Do you prioritize cross-platform?
So initially, we started with HTC Vive because of some reasons. First, it was the only thing that was out there in the market. Oculus Touch hasn't launched yet. PlayStation VR hasn't launched yet. And HTC Vive is really one of the greatest experiences out there. So HTC Vive initially. Then we also wanted to focus on more quality in the sense of experience and immersion. So high-end VR, so to speak, HTC Vive, Oculus, and PlayStation VR is what we'll be focusing on. Now there is mobile VR, which is also maybe even easier to get into, but that is just our strategy, and I guess it's just a taste thing. Also, it's more expensive to work with the premium VR in terms of time and money. So, either way, you can choose yourself. Yep.
Hey, so what were the biggest challenges you found while developing your products in terms of VR development?
Yeah, so VR is, once again, it's so new. So we started 5 months ago. So it was me and 4 other people. And when we decided that, yes, we're going to do VR. Now, I left everything I had and I was like, yeah, I'm going to invest in this all my life. We didn't have a VR headset to begin with. Our programmer had just broken his arm, which is kind of a funny story. Not for him. But we were so determined that we started developing for VR without having really any equipment whatsoever. Then we found out 2 weeks later, before we got our VR headset, that everything we created, we had to throw away. Because it is that different to create for VR. And this has happened from time to time. Since there isn't any blueprint, there isn't a recipe of this is how you create VR. We just really have to trial and error, kill your darlings, just a lot of fuck-ups, so to speak. But it's how you see it. I mean, once again, we have learned a lot, and now we're quickly becoming one of the experts because a lot of more people are being interested in VR, wanting to develop VR, and there isn't just VR. There is mixed reality. There is AR, 360 videos. So a lot of people will be more interested, and we're happy that we can share what we have learned throughout the process. Even we had to cry and sweat and blood and tears. We're happy that we did it, because otherwise we wouldn't have come this far. Time for, yep.
What do you do to make your game noticed?
So PR, yes. One is being at different events, such as this. Another thing is, so even though, so we have 12 people, we're still a startup. We haven't launched yet. And one of the main things for us is social media. And another really great thing that we have that the other bigger players, the bigger studios, gaming studios, doesn't have, is the fact that we can be quick, we can change from one day to another, and we can be more personal. So every YouTuber and influencer and blogger anywhere, we're really quickly to respond. So we try to be really direct and talk to every single player. And that, I think, is something more for the player. It sticks even more, so to speak. But then again, this is just the beginning. We are making a trailer, for instance, so we can show it to either journalists or on YouTube, etc. But mainly it's social media and influencers. Yep.
If I have a project already developed, can I transfer it to the VR? And how easy is to jump between VR, let's say HTC and Google or whatever?
Yes, and whichever. So the first thing people thought about VR was, cool, let's make every single game that's out there into VR. You can't really do that. For one, not every game works in VR, because even though we have solved the hardware issue, there's still a content problem, in the sense of, if you do too quick movements inside of the game, so for instance racing or running, you're gonna have a bad time. That is because the thing we see, it's just compare it with driving a car or sitting in a car, and some people get car sick, or even on a boat. It's because you see something, but you're feeling something different, so it collides, becomes different. It's to do with liquids inside the ear, whatever. The thing is, you can't create any content to VR. So, why we are a specific VR game studio is because we are creating games specifically made for VR. So we solve those problems that you will have any other way. So, for instance, in our game, you have big, long distances. So we have teleportation. That is one way to solve the problem. If we do a game where you have to run and shoot and either put Battlefield, it's not gonna work. Unfortunately, I love Battlefield, but it just wouldn't work. And then the second question was, how easy or difficult is it to port? So it's workable. You can do it. We will do it, but it requires a little bit of work, because the different hardware are not equal. They're not the same, meaning that there's different inputs. So with the HTC Vive, for instance, there is 2 sensors that tracks the VR headset and the controllers. 2 headsets. But with Sony PlayStation VR, you only have 1 in front, so it quickly becomes different with the inputs, so it wouldn't work. So what you really need to focus on and work on when you want to port it to other platforms, which is what we will do, is you need to think differently with first-hand programming and also some of the game design, because you can't really turn the same ways in all the hardwares. Another thing, with mobile VR, you don't have hand controls and you can't really walk, but with HTC Vive and soon Oculus Touch, you can. So it is different, but it's doable for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. We are going out of time. Thanks very much. It was great.